Barron Trump never thought a simple walk in the park would change everything. But when he saw his girlfriend standing over a starving little girl, mocking her, laughing as she humiliated her, something inside him snapped. The next few moments would leave everyone around them stunned. The sun was slowly setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The cool evening breeze swayed the trees gently, making soft, rustling sounds. The Trump estate was peaceful, with only the sound of birds chirping and the distant hum of passing cars. Barron Trump sat in the garden with his girlfriend, Zara. They were laughing, talking about everything and nothing at the same time. Zara was beautiful. Everyone said so. She had long, flowing hair, bright eyes that sparkled under the evening light, and a smile that could make anyone stop and stare. She wasn't just pretty. She was smart, and from a family just as powerful as the Trumps. Barron enjoyed her company. With her, he didn't have to think about all the expectations placed on him. He could just be himself. As they sat on the wooden garden bench, sipping on fresh juice, Zara suddenly looked up at the sky. The first few stars had started to appear. "I feel like taking a walk," she said, her voice soft but filled with excitement. Barron raised an eyebrow. "A walk? Where?" "The park," she said, smiling. "It's such a beautiful evening. Let's go." Barron hesitated. He wasn't in the mood to leave the house. He liked the garden. It was private, quiet. The park, on the other hand, was open to the public. People might recognize them. They might take pictures, ask questions. "I don't know, Zara," he said, leaning back. "Maybe another day." Zara pouted playfully, nudging his arm. "Come on, Barron. It'll be fun. Just a short walk, please." Barron sighed. He knew that look. She wasn't going to give up so easily. "Just for a little while," she added. "We'll have the driver with us. Nothing bad will happen." Barron looked at her, then at the darkening sky. He still wasn't sure. Something inside him told him to stay back, but he didn't want to disappoint Zara. After a few more minutes of her sweet talking and convincing, he finally gave in. "Fine, but not for long." Zara clapped her hands, excited. "Yay, let's go!" They informed the security team, but since it was just a simple walk, only one driver was assigned to take them. The driver opened the door. Zara got in first, still smiling, completely unaware that this would be a night they would never forget. The car moved smoothly through the quiet streets as the evening breeze whispered through the trees. Inside, Barron Trump sat beside Zara, watching the city lights flicker past. The air was cool, the roads not too busy, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. Zara was excited. She loved small moments like this, just the two of them, away from all the noise and attention their families always got. She had been looking forward to this little walk in the park. Barron, on the other hand, wasn't sure how he felt. Something deep inside him still felt off. He wasn't scared, but a tiny voice in his head told him that maybe, just maybe, they should have stayed home. He shook the feeling off. Zara was happy, and that was all that mattered. Finally, they arrived at the park. The driver parked close to the entrance and stepped out, opening the door for them. The park was big and beautiful, with tall trees, colorful flowers, and soft, glowing streetlights that lit up the walking paths. A few people were there, either jogging, walking their dogs, or sitting on benches enjoying the fresh air. Barron had worn a casual denim outfit with a simple top and a face cap. He didn't want anyone recognizing him. He wanted to be just another guy in the park, enjoying a peaceful night with his girlfriend. They strolled side by side, their fingers brushing against each other as they walked. Zara kept looking around, smiling. "Isn't this nice?" she asked. Barron nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, it's peaceful." They reached a small section of the park where different games were set up for people to play. Zara's eyes lit up. "Let's play something," she said, pulling Barron toward a ring toss game. Barron chuckled. "You really think you can beat me?" Zara smirked. "Oh, I know I can." And so the game began. They took turns throwing rings onto the poles, laughing every time one of them missed. Zara was surprisingly good at it, and Barron had to admit she was winning. "Okay, one last round," Barron said, picking up his ring. He focused, took a deep breath, and threw it. The ring landed perfectly on the pole. "Yes!" he cheered, raising his arms in victory. Zara rolled her eyes, giggling. Fine, you win this time. They continued walking, stopping now and then to admire the beautiful trees and small fountains around the park. The sound of water trickling and the soft rustling of leaves in the wind made everything feel calm. After a while, they found a quiet, grassy spot under a tree. Zara pulled out a small mat from her bag and spread it on the ground. They both sat down, feeling the cool air on their skin as they relaxed. For a while, they just sat there, enjoying the night. Then, Zara let out a deep sigh. "What's wrong?" Barron asked, turning to look at her. She played with the edge of the mat, her fingers tracing the fabric. "I was just thinking about P." Barron frowned. "P?" "My dog," she said softly. "Ever since I lost P, I've been a little lonely at home. He was my best friend, especially when Mom and Dad aren't around." Her voice trailed off, and Barron could see the sadness in her eyes. He had never seen Zara this quiet before. She was always full of life, always smiling. But right now, she looked lost. "I miss him," she continued, looking up at the sky. "It's been months, but sometimes I still expect him to come running when I open the front door. I still hear his little paws on the floor." Barron placed a gentle hand on hers. "Why don't you get another dog?" he asked. Zara shook her head quickly. "No, I don't want another dog. I'll never love any other dog the way I loved P." Barron understood. He knew what it was like to lose something, or someone, and feel like nothing could ever replace it. "I get it," he said quietly. "But you don't have to replace P. You can get another dog and still keep his memory alive." Zara sighed again, pulling her knees to her chest. "Maybe, but it won't be the same." For a moment, they sat in silence, just listening to the distant laughter of kids playing and the soft sound of the wind blowing through the trees. Suddenly, Barron's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. It was an important call, one he couldn't ignore. He sighed and turned to Zara. "I need to take this," he said. "I'll be back in a minute." Zara barely looked up from her phone. "Okay," she muttered, scrolling through Instagram. Barron stepped away, walking toward a quieter spot where he could talk without distractions. The further he moved, the more the noise of the park faded. Zara, now alone, leaned back on the mat and popped a piece of popcorn into her mouth. She reached for the other pack of popcorn, Barron's, but instead of eating it, she just held it, lazily scrolling through her phone. The evening was peaceful. The stars twinkled in the sky. Everything seemed fine until a small shadow appeared in front of her. Zara frowned and looked up. A little girl stood there. She looked about 10 years old, wearing old, dirty clothes that were too big for her. Her face was thin and her hair was messy. She clutched her stomach like she was in pain. Her big, tired eyes looked at Zara with desperation. "Please," the girl said in a soft voice. "Can you give me $1? I haven't eaten all day." Zara blinked at her. She couldn't believe it. A homeless child? Here? The girl's name was Faith. She had been wandering the streets looking for someone kind enough to help her. Her stomach growled loudly, but she had learned to ignore the pain. She looked at Zara with hope, waiting. Zara rolled her eyes and looked back at her phone. "Go away," she muttered, but Faith didn't move. "Please," the girl said again, her voice even weaker this time. "I'm really, really hungry." Zara sighed in frustration and put her phone down. She turned to the girl with a look of pure disgust. "You know what?" she said, smirking. "Since you won't leave me alone, I have something for you." She picked up the unopened pack of popcorn meant for Barron. For a moment, Faith's eyes lit up. She thought Zara was about to give it to her. But then, Zara did something shocking. She tore the pack open and poured all the popcorn onto the dirty ground right in front of the little girl. The popcorn scattered, mixing with the dust and small pebbles on the park floor. "There!" Zara said, laughing coldly. "If you're really that hungry, go ahead, eat from the floor." Faith froze. Her lips trembled. Her little hands curled into fists. She stared at the popcorn scattered on the dirty ground. Her small hands trembled. Her stomach ached with hunger, but she didn't move. Zara sat on the mat, leaning back with a proud smirk, watching her. "Well?" Zara taunted, raising an eyebrow. "Didn't you say you were hungry? Go ahead, eat." Faith swallowed hard. Her eyes stung with unshed tears, but she refused to cry. She had no choice. Slowly, she bent down on her knees. Her fingers hesitated over the dusty pieces of popcorn. Some were mixed with small pebbles. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to pick up a piece. She dusted it off as best as she could. Then she put it in her mouth. It was dry, tasteless. But her stomach was empty and the hunger was too much. So she picked up another piece, and another. Her tiny hands moved quickly, trying to grab as much as she could before someone took it away. Zara burst into laughter. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "Oh my God, this is hilarious," she giggled. "A real-life beggar eating from the floor. This is gold." She zoomed in on Faith's trembling hands, then on her face, which was filled with shame. Faith chewed in silence, pretending not to hear Zara's cruel laughter. But deep inside, she wanted to disappear. She could feel the cold ground beneath her knees, the dirt sticking to her fingers, the disgusted looks of people passing by. It hurt, but she was hungry, so she kept eating. Then, a shadow loomed over them. Heavy footsteps approached. Zara was too busy laughing to notice, but Faith did. She froze. Something felt different. The air around her changed. A sharp voice cut through the night. "What is happening here?" Zara's laughter stopped. Her body went stiff. Faith's heart pounded as she slowly turned her head. And there he was, Barron Trump, standing just a few feet away. His face was blank, but his eyes were filled with shock, confusion, disbelief. For a second, he didn't move. He just stood there, staring. Faith, on her knees. Popcorn, scattered on the ground. Zara, holding her phone, laughing. Barron's breathing became heavy. He had left for just a few minutes. Just a simple phone call. And now this? His chest tightened. "Zara," he said, his voice dangerously low. "What are you doing?" Zara flinched. She quickly turned off her phone screen and sat up straighter, forcing a smile. "Oh, Barron, you're back," she said sweetly, as if nothing was wrong. She flicked her hair over her shoulder and rolled her eyes. "This homeless girl was just being annoying. She kept begging for money, ruining my peace. I mean, it was just $1. She scoffed, shaking her head. "She wouldn't stop, so I taught her a little lesson," Zara continued, smirking. "She wanted food, so I gave her some. Look, she's eating just fine." She gestured at Faith like she was a stray dog. Barron's fists clenched. He felt something burning in his chest, something he had never felt before. Rage. His eyes flickered to Faith. She was still on her knees, her hands frozen over the dirty popcorn. Her face was turned downward, her shoulders shaking. She was humiliated. Barron's heart ached. He took a step forward, his jaw tightening. "Stand up," he said, his voice sharp. Faith didn't move. He softened his tone. "Hey, it's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to do this. Please, stand up." Faith hesitated, then slowly pushed herself to her feet. She kept her head down, not daring to look at him. Barron turned back to Zara, his expression dark. "What is wrong with you?" he asked, his voice low but dangerous. Zara blinked in surprise. "What? What the hell is wrong with you?" Barron repeated, louder this time. Zara frowned, crossing her arms. "Oh, come on, Barron, it's not that serious. She's just a beggar. Why do you even care?" Barron's stomach twisted. "A beggar?" Zara laughed lightly. "Relax, it was just a joke." "A joke?" Barron felt his blood boil. "You think this is funny?" he asked, his voice shaking with anger. Zara shrugged. "I mean, yeah." Barron's heart dropped. He had never felt this kind of disappointment before, not just at what Zara did, but at who she was. For the first time, he saw her clearly, and what he saw disgusted him. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without breaking eye contact with Zara, he took out a crisp $100 bill. He walked over to Faith and gently placed it in her tiny hands. Her eyes widened. I only asked for $1. Barron smiled softly. "I know, but I want you to have this. Buy yourself something warm to eat, okay?" Faith's hands shook, her eyes filled with tears, but this time not from shame, from hope. She clutched the money tightly and whispered, "Thank you." Barron gave her a reassuring nod. Then, slowly, he turned back to Zara. His expression was like stone. "I am leaving," he said coldly. Zara's smile faded. "Wait, what? I said I'm leaving?" Zara let out a nervous laugh. Barron, stop being so dramatic. Barron didn't move. His eyes burned into hers. I can't believe I ever liked you, he said quietly. Zara's stomach dropped. What? She whispered. Barron took a step closer. You're cruel, he said. And I don't want to be around someone like you. Zara's heart pounded. She could feel it. Something breaking. No, Barron, wait, But he wasn't listening anymore. He turned away and started walking. Zara scrambled to her feet, panic setting in. Barron, please, I was just joking, don't leave! But he didn't stop. He didn't even look back. Zara stood there, her hands shaking, watching him walk away, watching everything slip away. Barron sat in the back seat of the car, his hands resting on his lap. His fingers curled, then uncurled. His mind spun with everything that had just happened, his jaw clenched. The driver, an older man with gray at his temples, glanced at Barron through the rearview mirror. Sir, he said carefully, where is Miss Zara? Barron didn't answer immediately. He just stared out the window, his thoughts tangled, his heart still pounding. The driver waited, then asked again, Sir, are we not waiting for her? Barron exhaled, slowly. Then, without looking away from the window, he said firmly, No, we're leaving without her. The driver's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise. Are you sure, sir? Yes. That was all Barron said. The driver didn't ask anything else. Barron leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes for a moment. But the image of Faith, kneeling on the dirty ground, picking up food, would not leave his head. It made his chest feel tight. His fingers curled into fists. His breathing slowed. He opened his eyes, and just as he did, he saw Faith. She was walking past the car, her head down, her tiny arms wrapped around herself. She didn't even notice him. Her feet dragged across the pavement. She looked so small, so lost. Something inside Barron snapped. Without thinking, he reached for the door handle. He pushed it open and stepped out. The cold air hit his skin, but he didn't care. Hey, he called out. Faith froze. Slowly, she turned around. Her big, tired eyes widened when she saw him standing there. She looked unsure, nervous, like she wasn't sure if she should run away or stay. Barron took a step closer. It's okay, he said gently. Faith swallowed, lowering her gaze to the ground. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to bother you. Barron's stomach twisted. No, you didn't bother me, he said. I wanted to ask you something. Faith shifted uncomfortably, her bare feet rubbing against the pavement. What's your name? Barron asked. She hesitated, then very softly she said, Faith. Barron nodded. Faith? He said her name like it mattered, like it was important, like she was important. How long have you been out here? He asked. Faith looked down, twisting her fingers together. A long time, she whispered. Barron's heart ached. Where are your parents? He asked, his voice quieter now. Faith's lips pressed together. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear it, she said, They're gone. A sharp pain hit Barron's chest. His throat tightened. Gone. He didn't need to ask how. He could see it in her eyes. She had lost everything, and no one had helped her. She had been alone, cold, hungry, begging strangers for $1, and they had ignored her, or worse, humiliated her. Barron took a deep breath, his hands tightening at his sides. Do you have anywhere to stay? Faith shook her head. Barron felt something fierce rise in his chest. He looked at her, really looked at her. Listen, he said, I'm going to help you. Faith's eyes flickered with something uncertain, like she wanted to believe him, but she couldn't. She had probably heard those words before, from people who didn't mean them, from people who walked away. Barron saw the doubt in her face, and it hurt, because he wasn't like those people, and he would prove it. He knelt down, looking her straight in the eyes. I mean it, he said. I won't forget about you. I'll come back, I promise. Faith swallowed hard. Her hands shook. No one had ever promised her anything, not like this, not with this much certainty. Barron stood up. He turned to his driver. Take me home. The driver hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Barron glanced at Faith one last time. He got into the car. As the door shut, Faith stood there watching. She didn't know why, but her chest felt different, like something was shifting, like something warm had settled inside her, like maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. And for the first time in a very, very long time, she had hope.